So welcome to Bridging the Gap, expert career advice for Gen Z and Millennials. My name is Amy Layton, and I am your host today. We are going to be talking with career experts in answering questions that you may have regarding your job search. So I would like to start off by introducing Kenneth Diamond. Ken is the founder and president of wintheview.com. It is an online career portfolio. It helps job seekers create their presentations as far as video elevator pitches, career success stories, and helps with follow-up letters and online portfolios. Ken is also the founder and president of Digital Action, which is an award-winning executive search firm specializing in recruiting top talent in print and digital communications, technology, pharmaceutical, and medical imaging industries. Our next guest is Emily Wong. Emily is the founder of Words of Distinction, a company she created to help executive level job seekers land an interview through powerful career storytelling. Emily is also the host of a podcast called Career Cohort. She has contributed to several best-selling books that specialize in resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, and bios. Emily also serves as a writing coach for the Resume Writing Academy and other organizations, and is involved with volunteering her writing skills to help nonprofits in the San Francisco Bay Area where she lives. And our third guest is Letitia Rogers. Letitia is a certified professional resume writer and a career generalist with over 10 years of experience in the areas of career advising, staffing, and recruitment, both in the corporate and nonprofit settings. She has a passion for motivating people to tap into their inner tick and put their best self forward when looking to transition in their careers. She has served higher education administrator in career services at Southwestern Illinois College for 5 years until December 2020. And she is the owner of a company called The Tick Career Development, which is a growing career development focused on business. So I'd like to welcome everybody to today's session. And thank you for being a part of this discussion. And for the guests, as part of the registration, I had asked you to include a question that you have about your job search. But throughout this discussion, if you have questions, please feel free to include them in the chat, and we will be able to, answer and hopefully help you with your concern. And so this is my intent for this is just for it to be a panel discussion where we just talk about things that we see as career leaders, and hopefully it will help you, the job seeker, with any questions or concerns that you may have. So with all that said, let's get started with this. So one of the first questions that I received was, how can I stand out in a competitive job market? And so, I'd love to hear from the panelists as far as, what tips would you have to help somebody who is just starting in their career to help them stand out in this competitive market? And so, Emily, would you like to start?
Sure. I think that what we want to remember is starting with that resume and LinkedIn profile. Those are tools that are the baseline for getting this started, right? It's tempting to write a resume like a job description, where it's very responsibility based or very scope based. And those responsibilities and the scope of your role are very, very important. But in order to stand out, you really want to make sure you're talking about your special sauce. What is it that you bring to the table? What is it that you bring to the table that will solve the problems for the employers that you're applying to? So that about section is 2,600 characters that you can use to really speak in the first person, because you want to remove that barrier between yourself and the reader, the recruiter, the resume. So write that in the first person. Your headline is 220 characters. You can use all of the skills. You can list 50 words. In a resume, that would be word packing, but in LinkedIn, it's recommended that you use all of those 50 words. And just make sure that it's complete. Make sure your photo is there. It's a professional photo. The banner, it looks good to have a banner now as well. And stay active on LinkedIn. You can comment. You can, if you're just getting started and you're feeling a little uncomfortable about putting yourself in there, at least if you're active, my understanding, and I know Letitia and Ken could talk more about this because of staffing, but my understanding is if a recruiter goes on LinkedIn and they're looking for a candidate and they see one candidate's very active and the other person isn't, it's more likely, I would think, that the recruiter is going to want to contact the person who's active because they know they're going to get back to them because they have so many roles to fill. So, I mean, that's the start. I think that's kind of to get the ball rolling.
Thank you. Yeah, because this is something too that I noticed, especially with young job seekers, is that when it comes to their LinkedIn profiles, they kind of avoid the about section and they immediately go into, the experience, the education. And I don't know about you all, but when I'm looking at a resume or LinkedIn profile that avoids the about section or the career summary section, I'm at a loss, especially if I don't know what type of position that person is interested in. So what do you recommend for someone, again, who is just starting their career? They may not have a lot of experience. They may have their degree, but they really don't have a lot of experience. They kind of have an idea of what they're looking for. What are some suggestions that you would recommend, again, to help their resume stand out or their LinkedIn profile stand out?
Well, what I would say, obviously, so I totally agree with what Emily is saying. That is the basis. You want to get your online presence together so that people at least have a point of reference where they can go to, and then have your resume, your document, because before they meet you, especially if you're applying for a job or sending it in, they're going to see that resume. But for me, also, one of the biggest things is to get from behind your computer and get outside and network. I think a young person, especially graduating college or just going into the career field, you need to get in front of people who know people, who know people, who know people, and people who are resources. Because this job market, I know some of you may have really targeted things that you want to do, and you want to be specific, and you want to as specific as possible to know what you want to do. But also there's a lot of flexibility required in some of the jobs that you're looking at. So you may want to go into, let's say you want to go into an engineering career, but there are other skills that a particular organization look for you to have, because all organizations are different. You don't know about kind of those additional nuances in certain positions until you get to the interview. But the more you're talking to professionals that may work at a company or in a field that you're interested in going into, you kind of learn about other nuances that are going on behind the scenes, because a lot of companies are looking for, one, people to wear multiple hats, to have varying skills, for your soft skills to be up to par. And you want to know what that looks like. You want to know about what the culture is like at different companies in the field that you're going into. So I think the best way to do that, you want to get out, go to job fairs. I hear a lot of people say, especially coming out, well, I just got out of college, I landed a job. But people turn over jobs really quickly these days. And so even if you have a job, you still need to be always looking and having your eyes open and going to those types of things so that you can meet more people who are exposed to what your skills are, what you can do, what your background is, and how they may be able to help you. So I think really you got to kind of get around a little bit from behind the computer.
Okay, great. And Ken, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes. Excuse me. The job search process is a lot like the sales process. So in the beginning of the sales process, you do your due diligence on the company, and then you have your probing questions ready. So the probing questions are really good questions that candidates would ask of the potential employer to find out what their needs are. What are they really looking for? Hiring managers have specific hard skills and soft skills in mind they're looking for. So once you understand that, then you can present yourself as the solution, for that position. So if you're competing for a specific position, I used many years ago a tabletop presentation, which basically correlated. Once I found out what their needs were, I listed them, and then I came up with 2 or 3 key points. Before the interview, I did this for prep, and then I came in with a tabletop presentation. So I reviewed their needs, what they're looking for, and got agreement from the hiring manager that yes, that's what they were looking for. And then I asked which of those are most important, and he at the time told me what that was. So I was really able to be more confident and prepared because I had prepared this presentation ahead of time. So it was really like a discussion guide in the interview. And I asked permission to share it in the beginning, and he, of course, said, yes, let's see what you have. So I methodically reviewed the key hiring criteria, and then I went through my 2 or 3 points that I had prepared beforehand that I wanted to make with regard to, whatever. I think it was sales process. It was, did you make quota? There was about 5 or 6 areas that they were honing in on, that they wanted to find out about my qualifications. So it created a really good conversation, and I was the only one who did that. So I was different. And at the end of the interview, I asked, Charlie, based upon what we've heard today, is there any reason why you wouldn't extend me an offer? And he said, no, you're in, you've got the job. So that's when the light bulb went off. And then when I went to the kickoff meeting, whenever I started, they had this kickoff meeting in Boston, and a lot of people would come up to me and said, oh, you're the guy who did the presentation. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I'm here. That's all I care about.
Mhm.
So that was a really, it was a light bulb that went off. And then subsequently, we developed a software which would help job candidates prepare presentations. And we had thousands of success stories with it over the past 10 years. And we just completely revamped and re-engineered the software to add video and to add a digital portfolio recently. And a lot of people, if you do what everyone else does, then you're not really standing out. You're not differentiating. But for example, one of the features in our software allows a person to create their story, their success story, and we have limits on its situation, challenge, action, result. So it could walk a person through that format. If they don't have a coach, or if they have a coach, then it's that much more valuable. But what you do is you put that content together, telling a story on a problem that you solved and what the result was. And then we have a teleprompter that sits just beneath the webcam, so you can practice it. You can hear your voice, and then you can play it back and see, and then you can publish the link, or you can put your success stories into this digital portfolio, which is a custom link. So if you're interviewing with Google, it could be, you can customize the title of it. So what the hiring manager sees, they click on that. And this could sit at the top of your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, anywhere, or it could be emailed. So the hiring manager or the hiring team, they hit that link and they can see you. Hi, my name's Ken Diamond. I'm founder of, and you can do your elevator pitch for 30 or 45 or a minute, short and sweet, but they see you talking through, so they can see the genuine person. So I think that's a differentiator. We have people using the software successfully, putting these together. You can customize them for each opportunity. Once you build your portfolio, then you can just duplicate that and then tweak it for the next opportunity. Like you can create a unique cover letter or a follow-up letter. And once you record that, you just select that to be populated into the digital portfolio. So it's a differentiator. You know, you can do it on Zoom and you could do it on your camera, but our software brings everything together. So I don't want to sound too much like a commercial, but you asked about differentiation, and that's, you know,
Yeah.
Well, and
Sounds good
that,
stuff.
yeah, and that brings up a couple of questions for me in that do you find, you know, putting your recruiter hat on, your staffing hat on, and, you know, Letitia joined in as well. Do you find that employers are becoming more open to the idea of seeing like video resumes, video presentations when it comes to assessing job candidates, or you know, do you feel that helps the job candidate to stand out a little bit further, or are you still finding resistance from employers that are more into the traditional, you know, let's check out LinkedIn, let's check out the, you know, traditional resume?
Well, I don't think that many people are doing it still, you know, yet.
Okay.
And we're you know, I'm trying to be kind of not forceful, but you know, I'm really strongly suggest to my candidates that they do this. And some will say, oh yeah, sounds great, but they won't do it. But we've had some amazing success stories with the hiring company is WL Gore company. They make Gore-Tex.
Okay.
They actually asked in the key interview for the candidate to come in with these stories, and they actually spell it out in an email. You know, you need to prepare for the interview by creating your relevant success stories. So I think if it's relevant, you know, and it's fairly well done, it doesn't have to be an award-winning video, but just the person with a decent background with, you know, the framing. We have all the suggestions in the software, but I don't think a lot of candidates are doing this today.
Yeah. Letitia, you know, what are your...
I agree. I think it's very new, but I think employers are becoming more open to it, especially it kind of eliminates, you know, you do like that first initial contact or interview or whatever. Again, it's that cultural impact. People come in, they have the employers know they can do the job, but then, you know, you get into an interview and, you know, how's your communication? Do I feel like you're going to be a fit here with the team? I feel like those video interviews provide a little bit of that information. It shows how they can communicate. It shows just, you know, their personality and how you feel like they're going to be a culture fit for that organization. I think that up front, that is a good way for a candidate to get through the door and an employer to not waste time bringing them in for an interview and going deeper. So I do feel that employers are becoming more open to it, but it is new. So
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, as a recruiter, I would like to see relevant, you know, if the top 3 hiring criteria are, you know, 1, 2, 3, I want to see relevant information about that from the candidate. So if they can just create a story about, you know, tell me about your greatest sales achievement, or tell me about a time, you know, there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. But I would like to see relevant, you know, in the key hiring criteria. Because I can see it in their resume, but I don't really see the stories in the resume. You know, I can't get that out. So if I see them in a minute and a half saying, here's the situation, the challenge was this, here's what I did with the team or with them, and the result was, you know, more money saved, or, you know, whatever.
And that is, you know, that's such a good point. And especially with the resume, and Emily, hop in with the resume. You know, when I approach doing a resume for someone, you know, one of the top questions I ask is, you know, tell me about a situation, tell me about the accomplishment, the result, how it benefited and the organization, and why do you think a potential employer would want to know about this? And, you know, sometimes I kind of get that, you know, deer in the headlight, you know, kind of look like, wow, that's a tough question. But, you know, and having, you know, been in the HR, when I would review resumes for potential candidates, these were the things that I was like thinking, okay, how is this person going to make my life easier, you know, for my department? And so for someone who is just starting out and they really don't have a lot of job experience, you know, they've dedicated their time to their education, and then, in like some situations, possibly volunteering. We saw a lot of this during the pandemic, where a lot of the students, because of the lockdown and everything, they really did not have the opportunity to work for an employer while they were going to school, or if they did, it was remote. So for this generation who has experienced that, and they are now starting to jump into like the job market, what recommendations would you have for them to help their resumes stand out? And again, if they have a lot of volunteer experience, or, like through their academic studies, Emily, as a creator of resumes and LinkedIn profiles, what are some of the things that you encourage the graduates or the job seeker to include? And then as recruiters, Letitia and Ken, what are the things that you're looking for if you receive a resume from a person who doesn't have a lot of work experience?
So I typically work with executives and mid-career rising professionals. However, I have two sons who are Gen Z. One is now in the professional world, and then my other son is just started his internship this week. And one of the things that I coach them on, and that they've done on their own, and they've given me feedback, is to really capture so first of all, get really involved and build relationships with professors. A lot of students don't take advantage of building those relationships with professors and finding opportunities to work in, whether it's the lab or special projects, and then joining those clubs where you have a leadership role, because there are all types of leadership opportunities within clubs that you can talk about, and they do add value in those interviews, on your resume and in the interviews. So I think that there's a tendency for us to feel like that's not really that important, but
Right.
it really is. And, this also even extends to, this is a little bit of a separate area. This is someone who was out of the workforce for a while, and she had worked in the hotel profession, and then hospitality. And she took a break to raise her children. And while she was raising her children, she got very involved in the PTA, and she raised millions of dollars for the school. So these are all data points. And when we wrote her resume, we actually wrote that within the experience. We didn't say professional experience, we said experience. And she gave herself that title that she had, and she had all these amazing data points. And then she sort of walked herself right back into that role, and quickly got promoted to director. So I think we have this tendency to think that these things don't matter, and they all really, really do. And getting back to, I wanted to talk about, Ken mentioned, these stories, these career stories, so important. And, we talk about CAR stories, challenge, action, results, which you talked about, Amy, as well. And also CART, you can call it CART stories. That T is for tie back, going back to what you were talking about. How is it relevant? So understanding that relevant, and even those soft skills are relevant to what you'll be doing. They could be relevant to that role. And going back to what Letitia mentioned, that networking, yes, really, really important. And what we want to remember is that when we reach out to people, LinkedIn is a great tool to get those in-person conversations started by introducing yourself. Make sure when you're connecting, send a personal note. Maybe you can find something that you have in common. It might be your university. It could be someone who is in your mutual network. But all of these things, and don't feel like you have to know everything when you're just getting out of college. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. And I think if I could go back and tell myself, or advise myself on coming out of college, it would be, don't think you need to know a lot. It's okay. Be curious. Understand, again, understand the problems that the companies are facing. Because when you show that curiosity and you show that understanding of the company, they think, okay, this person knows how to do research. This person knows how to connect. And what Letitia was saying too about the video, like Ken's video opportunity there with Chat GPT and other AI, there's concern about how do I stand out if everybody's doing this.
Right.
You're on video, there's nobody's doing your video but you, right?
Yes.
That's a good point,
That's
too.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to add for people just going into the job market. So this might sound a little contradictory because I'm big on being confident and bold and ambitious, about what you want. But I think coming out, what I see a lot of is people are not being realistic when they're entering the job market in terms of, where you're coming from and where you're trying to go, what
Yeah.
skills you bring to the table. So I think, being young, first jumping into the job market, know what you have, and then know what goal that you're trying to reach, but understand that there's a certain skill set and there are certain skills, maybe even certifications that you haven't even had the time to acquire because you're just getting out of college or you're just getting in. So understand like what you have, what you may lack in skill, and the time that it's going to take to get there. My second suggestion about that is, do a little bit of career projecting. So, and that's a lot to ask, I think, of a person entering the market. So even looking at the positions that may be, let's say, a step above the one that you're going for, and understanding what the employer looks for in those so that you have a goal to work towards in terms of what you need, and you can ensure a little bit more job security because of how the market's changing. It's changing a lot. What employers are requiring is a lot, and you need to make sure that you are prepared to seek whatever skill set or skills that are needed so that you can have a little bit more stability. And when I say that, I mean the stability that you are expecting to have. So I would definitely say be realistic, look ahead, and then work towards that. Get ahead of it. Don't wait until you get into a job to know what I'm going to need to move to the next step. Because, millennials and Gen Z, we want to move fast. I'm a millennial myself. So we want to move fast. We want to know, hey, what's next? How much? Okay, can I get a little bit more money? And I want it now. Or I'm moving on, those types of things. And so if that's what you want, the ball is kind of still in candidates' court a little bit. The market's changing, but you got to prepare for it ahead of time. You can't just come in. Well, I think during the pandemic, people were demanding whatever they wanted. That's not stable, though. That's not stable, so you need to know where you're trying to go and do what you need to do to get there, and be realistic coming in that, you're not going to be, an astronaut straight out the gate.
Right.
Prepare a little bit more.
And I think that's such a good point to bring up, because I do think a lot of, especially, Gen Z, they do graduate, they have their degrees, and then I think, some of them have unrealistic expectations, and they, so many times when, I have conversations with young recent graduates, they're like, I don't want to do grunt work. This is what I want my starting salary to be. And it's like, but what do you have to show to justify that? And so it's kind of, hard having those conversations. Yes. I mean, I think this generation, I think they're quite fascinating, and I think they have a lot to offer to employers, but they just need to find a way to better communicate it, to show what their potential is. And so, taking that example, like, what do you, when you are, dealing, and I guess maybe I'll ask Emily and Ken this, from the parent perspective of having Gen Z kids and graduates, like, how do you prepare them to present themselves so that they are not setting themselves up for unrealistic expectations?
Do you want to go, Ken?
Yeah, I had another point that I wanted to make.
Oh, okay.
if a lot of people, play sports, and there's a lot of leadership skills and team building skills that can be discussed, with someone, if they played. My daughter was a lacrosse player, D1 program. So don't be shy about talking about that, and your achievements there. So just, there's a lot of, there's a lot of content. If you played some kind of sport, you can talk about the leadership skills that you learned and the teamwork there.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, I
Yeah.
just want to mention that. I think that's a
Yeah,
good
I think that's a great point to bring,
Yeah.
to mention.
Yeah, it really is important, those skills. And, even I actually had my son as a guest on my podcast on the January 20th episode, if anybody wants to listen to that, because he shared his trajectory from the internship process to what he's doing now. He talked about his mistakes that he made, and he talked about what worked really well for him. And one of the things that he really emphasized was that when he put himself out there, he really, and it sounds like your daughter too, with her lacrosse. I mean, when you put yourself out there, it's really scary. It can be really, really scary. But
Yep.
those are those things that also goes into storytelling. If the employer wants to know about how you were, what did you do to overcome something? You could talk about something that you did in college that was out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
And they want to hear stories like that. And it's really human. It's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did a success story and published a portfolio about working through COVID,
Mhm.
which was extremely challenging. She was a sophomore and a junior, when COVID hit.
Right.
So it was really difficult, and she talked about what she did to overcome that. And, she made a nice little story out of that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I've had one of our other colleagues, Gina Riley, on my podcast as well, just talk about COVID and remote work. And I think that might be something to talk about now, because remote work, when you're starting out the gate, might present some challenges. And
Yeah.
one of the things that my son also talked about was his first internship. He was supposed to go to Albuquerque, and that was canceled. It was completely remote.
Mm.
So when he was applying for his second internship, he actually asked them how much of that would be on site, because the challenge with, if you're an intern, the people you're working for are very, very busy. And it sometimes it might require more of a meeting, where if you're in an office, you could kind of lean over and maybe ask a question quickly and be done. And not to say that you should be asking questions all the time, but and then you can, there's also this opportunity to go to lunch with people, and people who are not just in your direct line, but people who are in other departments. So I think that is one thing to consider. And Letitia, I think you brought up that really good point. I don't know if you use the word humility, but humility is important. And, there is a feeling sometimes where we can be very, very demanding. But recruiters, hiring managers, everybody is really, really busy. And I think that you can ask these questions. Can I work remote? I mean, that's a valid question. But remember, remote work, starting your career in remote might not be the best route for you. The other thing that I noticed, my younger son was telling me, I don't know if this is directly answering your question, Amy, but I thought it was really, really interesting.
Mhm.
He would have conversations with people, and as he would have a conversation, he'd learn a little bit more, and he'd take notes. He'd call me afterwards and he'd say, I think I could have done this better. And then he would apply that to the next one. And then he would gather intelligence about his field. He's in civil engineering. So he was actually learning as he was going. And that's another thing. Once you get yourself out there, there's some momentum that will carry you forward. And
Yeah.
it can turn out to be a real fun adventure.
Oh, I agree. And I think one of the main things that, we have to emphasize, especially for someone who's just starting out, and even experienced job seekers who maybe have taken a break from the job market, or they're planning to change career goals. I'm a big proponent of research, research. And it's like, research the industry that you're interested in, get an idea of, okay, like, what are the salary expectations for a particular position? Check the growth potential within that industry. Or, if you're researching companies, do you want to start your career in a small company, or do you want to start in a large company? Ask yourself the reasons why you're interested in this particular field. Living in the DC area, a lot of young people, it's their ideal job to land a job on the hill. And I think what happens is a lot of times these young people will get caught up in the idea of, so they could say, oh, I'm working on the Hill, I'm working with this representative or the senator, but they don't take into consideration the aspects of the job as far as what they will be doing. They don't take into consideration that, hey, DC is a very high cost of living, and will you be able to afford working here? And this is actually, I saw a post online where someone had stated, hey, I got my dream job working on the Hill, but I can't afford it. What do I do? And this person was really stressing out, should they get a second job? If so, like, what could they do because their hours were so crazy? Or should they leave their job to look for a better paying job? And so, I really tapped into the, what Letitia was saying about the whole unrealistic expectations of it. And so that's the one thing I would really recommend to someone who, like I said, who's just starting out, or they're planning to make career goals. Do your research. And so, that's just my 2 cents with the whole thing. Another question that I
want to say one thing,
Sure.
Amy.
Sure.
One thing, social media, Instagram, all that stuff. I think, I want to just kind of point out how that plays into what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And people maybe having some unrealistic expectations because, the glitz and glamour, for instance, working on the Hill, like you said, you can't compare yourself, and it's really serious when you're going in, you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and you want to hop into the job market. Stay off social media and stop comparing yourself to what you think you see that other people are doing and how successful they've become, and understand that there's a process. I just think that's a big thing for the generation that we're speaking to, in terms of understanding, like, what it really takes to get to where you're trying to go. It's not what you see.
Yeah.
It's, you gotta get engaged with people and understand realistically what it's going to take for you to then get to, where you want to go, the dream job, the work that it takes to go into that. And first and foremost, like you said, you have to survive. You got to be able to eat. You got to be able to pay your bills. So yeah, I just wanted to throw the social media piece in, the comparing ourselves to other people, because I think that has a lot to do with this happening.
That is such a great point, Letitia.
Yes, it really is. It really is. And so moving on from that, and like transitioning into the next question, what recommendations would you have when it comes to networking? There are some schools of thought that a person, especially who they're just starting out, should just kind of put together a resume just for the sake of having a resume, but really focusing on networking. And, they look at it and, again, there are some schools of thought that say, forget about the resume, forget about, LinkedIn is okay, but forget about the informational job interviews or the elevator pitches, and just focus all of your attention in getting in front of the right people. Like, what are recommendations for, young people who are just starting out? I'm of the school of thought that all of those things play a role. You have to have the resume. You have to have the LinkedIn profile that stands out. You have to, feel comfortable asking people who may be in the same career field to give pointers. And of course, networking, that is extremely important. What are your recommendations when it comes to helping somebody feel more comfortable with networking? Because a lot of times people, job seekers, and again, job seekers of all ages, kind of have an idea that networking is, let me tell you about myself so you can offer me a job. It's about what the employer or that person can do for them instead of, hey, this is what I can do for you. What are recommendations for job seekers to take into consideration when they start their networking journey?
Well, the first thing I would say is understand you're looking for a job, you're looking for something, and so is everyone else. Even if somebody that's been working, they've been in the workforce 20, 30 years, you look up to them even as a mentor. If this is an exchange, the networking is. And so just understand that. So you need to go in it with a mindset of servitude. That is what I think, because again, it's interactive. So, I can help you, you can help me, and you're just kind of collecting information as well. You need to have a heart of servitude. I know that's tough. You want a job, you want it now, and you know what you want, but that's what you have to do in networking. And I would start with the field, maybe what you've majored in, join some professional organizations, attend the meetings, attend the events that they have, because I believe that eliminating and that helps you to narrow down what you really want to do. So you may be in a particular field, but that field has different areas that you can specialize in, or there's a lot of different jobs types within that area. And that helps you also learn kind of, I like this, but I don't like that. And you kind of get to narrow down what you want to do. So I would say first start with whatever it is that you're focusing on now that you think you want to do, and join those organizations, your local professional organization or local chapters for the professional organizations that are tailored to the field that you want to go into, and start there. And then you can do a quick Google search, honestly, in your area. There's like a ton of networking events all over the place, and just go to them. Mm-hmm. Do not eliminate the resume. Make sure you have your elevated pitch ready. You need all of those things, because what are you going to be talking to people about if you don't have them? So
exactly,
right,
exactly. And I think on that note, I completely agree with you. And I think on that note, I hate to have to wrap this up, because it's such a great conversation and I can talk with all of you all day. I'd love, again, thank you for participating. And, I hope the people who are listening, I hope this has helped you, in answering some of your job search questions. And again, thank you all, and have a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice
Thank
to
you
meet
so
you.
much.
Nice to
You
see
as
everyone.
well. Right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again
Bye.
for hosting, Amy.
Sure. Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you, Emily and Ken and Letitia.